What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Avenue A. Happy Friday to everyone. It was another long week for me, so I don't know how everyone else is feeling, but I am definitely excited for the weekend. I'm really excited about today's episode. We have a very special guest today, and I'm very pumped to introduce her to you all. Before I do, ooh, my earphone just fell out. But before I introduce our guest today, I just want to introduce the show a little bit, if for those of you who are joining us for the first time. So Avenue A is a platform that I created to connect with and celebrate my fellow artists in the theater community primarily. And this is a show that where we talk about acting, networking, and the industry in general. Because I know quarantine has been really isolating and hard for a lot of artists. It's been hard for me, and so I've found that this is a fun way to sort of keep in touch with people and learn from my peers at a distance. So thanks for joining us. If you've never tuned in before, welcome. And so today we have a very special guest. Her name is Kennedy Caughell. So a little bit about Kennedy. She is an actor, performer, and a teacher who was raised on a small Oklahoma ranch, and she's now based out of New York City. She got her BFA in music theater from Elon University, and shortly after graduating, she performed across the nation and abroad as Heather in American Idiot. Since then, she's been seen in multiple regional theaters and national tours and on Broadway. Kennedy traveled the country by broomstick in the National Tour of Wicked, covering the role of Elphaba, and she performed on Broadway in Great Comet and most recently the role of Carole King in the national touring production of Beautiful, the musical. She's also a part of the original cast of the new musical Super You, which was set to open off-Broadway at the Daryl Roth Theater in New York City on May 27th, but of course was postponed due to COVID-19 and the pandemic. But I am so excited to welcome Kennedy to the show today. Hi, Kennedy.
Hello, it's good to be here.
It's so nice to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. That was such a nice intro. Thank you for that.
Oh, of course.
Sorry,
yeah, I'm really excited. A little bit. I think we have a bit of a delay.
Okay, got it.
But we'll work with it. So, I was just watching actually the new song that Playbill released from Super You, called Stronger Now, right? That's the song?
That's the song. That's the finale of the show.
Oh, wow.
So
it was gorgeous.
It's the time in the show where my character... Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love it because it's the time in the show where the character fully steps into herself and into her power of being herself and loving who she is and teaching others to love themselves. So it's a really beautiful moment of the show.
That's awesome. And the way that it was put together too was amazing. For anyone watching who wants to check out that song, it's called Stronger Now from the musical Super You, and it's out on Playbill if you want to take a listen. Kennedy, you're amazing in that song. Your voice is beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, Lord's Lane, she's the woman who wrote the show, and she can write a bop.
It sure is a bop. I was like dancing around to it. It's a really good song. Okay, so let's jump right into the questions if that's okay with you. I'm excited to get your input. Yeah. So the first question I have is, how has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? And do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Yes. How has failure set me up for success? And what is a favorite failure of yours? Yes. So I went to Elon University, which is an amazing school. I enjoyed all 4 years that I had there. It was incredible. I met some of the best friends that stick by me and are still a huge part of my life during my college years. But I will say, I remember when I was that age and when you're in high school and college, your world feels I mean, it feels big, but your world is actually so small. Am I making any sense? Your world is small in the way that we see failure as not getting the role we want, or we see failure as not getting cast. And I'll stave off what I'm about to say for one of the questions later, because I believe it answers that question. But I saw not getting cast as a freshman. I didn't really even get cast till my sophomore year, and even then it was a little difficult to get cast. I got lucky and I got cast as a lead my senior year. And I saw that as a failure my freshman and sophomore year. But it prepared me for the real world, because you're not going to book everything you go in for. You just aren't. And just because you don't book a role doesn't mean that you have failed. You could have gone in and you could have represented yourself to the 110% of who you are, and you could have blown them out of the water, but that part was already past. There's so much out of your control when it comes to the business. And I'm so grateful that I was barely cast at Elon. I'm so grateful that it was a struggle to get cast at Elon, because one, I had all this extra time to get in the practice room. So by the time I was a senior, I was very well practiced by the time that casting directors came in and saw me. But it also taught me resilience. So that's one way that a perceived failure, I believe really helped me, because you have to be resilient in this business as an actor. You have very little control over very few things.
Indeed.
So, yeah. But I will say a failure that actually, what was the second part of the question? It was a failure, my favorite failure?
A favorite failure, yeah.
Yeah, actually my favorite failure was the first time I went in for Beautiful. It was 2 or 3 people after Jessie Mueller for the original Broadway. I was 21. I think I was 21. 22. No, 22. I was a 22-year-old baby. In my opinion, much too young to play the part of Carole King, which I was at the time. But they brought me in to sing for Carole, and I didn't try. I did play the piano, but I got nervous because I had flown in from the American Indian tour, and there weren't really a lot of pianos to practice, so I didn't practice as much as I should have. And I got nervous, and my hands started shaking, and I remember vamping and going, "Want to take over for me?" And they all laughed, and I finished the scene out, and they're like, "Good recovery." Come to find out, they don't actually have the carols actually really play the piano. We all have to learn how to mime it.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yes, it is. But our job is to make you believe that we are playing the piano. So if we do that, that's great. But we're not forced to play the actual score.
Sure.
But because I do play piano, I enjoy playing piano chords. But that was a perceived failure, and I walked out of that room going, "Oh my gosh, I blew it. They're never going to see me again." And I learned two very valuable things. Don't do anything extra. If they want to see you play an instrument, they'll ask.
Yeah.
2, I also learned that just because you hear no once doesn't mean no forever, because I ended up 3 years down the road, 3 or 4 years down the road, somewhere on that timeline, I ended up understudying the role on Broadway and then taking over for the tour. So it doesn't always mean forever.
So after that original audition, you got a call basically saying like, "Thanks, but no thanks." And then how did it happen later?
No, actually, usually when you go in for Broadway and big major roles like that, they don't have to call you or tell you anything. You just kind of figure it out by not hearing anything. But I knew. I was like, oh, I was so embarrassed. Come to find out, nothing is ever as bad as you think it is. So don't apologize.
No, that's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big thing is if you're in the room, they want to see you. They want you to succeed. So don't apologize for being there, because that's your time. And you're right for it, but I didn't hear anything. I could suss out the energy. I was like, I probably could have not been as nervous, and I was just so embarrassed that I couldn't even think.
Yeah.
And I was young. I was 22. Like that. I mean, that's really young to be going in for that kind of role. But I'm very fortunate to have gotten that experience where was I going with this? What did you
Oh, I asked, so the original audition, and then 3 years later, did they get in touch with you, or what happened then?
Yes, so they got in touch with my agents, and they were like, well, we need somebody for the tour. So at this point I was like, all right, I know it really well. I know it like the back of my hand. I'm not going to go in and play the piano. And I just went in with confidence, and I said, here's my Carole, this is what I'm going to do. And they're like, that's a great job. Didn't hear anything. Come to find out, they bumped up the understudy for the tour. But then 3 months after that, it said, the understudy role is opening up on Broadway. Can we see her again? And I went in and did the same thing. Because another thing you should know, if you go in multiple times for something, for a role, and you don't book it, but they keep bringing you back in, that means you're doing something right. So don't overanalyze it, don't overthink it. So I did the same thing, and then that happened to be the time, and they're like, you want to be on Broadway? And I said, yeah, let's do it. So,
I mean, who could say no to that offer, right?
right.
That's amazing. And I think it's so important too, the fact that you went in multiple times and like you could have perceived those auditions as failures, right? Or just been like, well, I'm obviously wrong for the role, or they don't like me, or something. You could have psyched yourself out. But the fact of the matter was, it was all down to timing, right? Like someone else was already, being bumped or whatever. The understudy was, and they really did have you in their mind.
Exactly. That's the thing, is with long-running shows, it's so important to remember that a lot of times things come down to financial, because they have an understudy, so that understudy already has thousands of dollars worth of costumes that fit them, and they don't have to pay for extra costumes. I mean, and also they know them, so they know that she's going to nail it every night. They don't have to take a risk. They already know her. She's in the family. And that happens a lot in this business, and it's really smart business-wise. It doesn't mean that they don't like you, and usually if they keep bringing you in, you're doing something right. So
that's amazing. So I'm wondering, kind of following up on that, during your first, like either Broadway or touring gig, I guess your first touring gig was American Idiot, right?
Right.
Okay, so it could be during that, but it also could be while you were on Broadway. What are 3 things that you learned during that experience that you didn't learn from school or from regional theater?
Ooh. Gosh, that's so good. Well, the first thing I learned is always, always, always be a good person. Because it doesn't matter how high you belt. It doesn't matter how amazing of an actor you are. If you are terrible to work with, you make everyone else's lives around you a living hell. So just be nice. Be a good human and be nice. I did learn that one. Just from being in the space. And that's not from any particular show. That's from my experience directly out of school, several jobs, even until now. So just be nice and be a good person, because it just makes everyone's lives easier. That one. I would also say take care of yourself, especially on the road. Don't be afraid to stand up for what you need. If you need to take a rest day, then take a rest day, and do self-care. Because I think a lot of times we as actors and performers, we're so passionate about what we do that we will go too far in the way that we will become performance bots, instead of remembering that we're human beings that have to be watered, fed, and cared for.
Right.
Mentally, physically, emotionally. There's so many reasons to practice self-care and self-love, especially on the road when you're not around your community, and the only community you have is the family that's within the show, which is wonderful, but also can sometimes be difficult. And there are days where it does become a job, but you got to remember to love yourself and take care of yourself on those days when it gets hard.
How did you navigate self-care and prioritizing self-care while you were navigating the high demands of being on tour?
Totally. Number one is get enough sleep. I know it seems trivial and small, but getting sleep is the number one problem that I had. I know a lot of my friends have had getting enough sleep, especially on a bus and truck, because you're up at really early hours in the morning to get on a bus, and then it's difficult to sleep unless you have a certain pillow. Ooh, my neck just popped. Um, you know, things like that, making sure you're eating healthy and not emotional eating. At least that's my journey. Is if I miss home, then I'll go and try to find some barbecue or really amazing Asian food, it's things that will bring me comfort and joy. But sometimes my body needs a kale salad, just to balance it all out. And also not being afraid. There is, whenever you're in a show, whether it be Broadway or tour, there are times when it's really fun to hang out with actors and artists, not just actors, artists, performers, people that work backstage, anybody in the business, right? Because we're all really passionate people and we all are storytellers. And usually you're going to have some of the funnest personalities that I've ever met, on tour, in the show. So you want to go out and hang out afterwards, but sometimes when you're tired, it's okay to say no. And you know what? A lot of people have FOMO, fear of missing out. Right. But there's also something that I've learned to ask myself. I'm like, what are you saying yes to when you say no to being in a loud bar with a few drinks? How fun would that be? But also, what are you saying yes to? Is it being in good mind and good vocal health for the next 3 days and being able to be there and be present for your friends on the bus? And you're saying yes to that instead of that, or maybe being able to be in the show and put forth less effort in the way that you're not struggling because you're hungover or whatever. Not saying you would be hungover, hopefully not by that point, but you get what I'm saying.
I totally do.
What you're saying yes to.
I think that's a great mindset. Yeah, because my acting teacher drilled this into my head. She was my voice and speech teacher. She always said the most vocal injuries happen not during the show, but after the show at the bar. And so she drilled that in. Alethea, if you're watching this, I'm remembering what you're saying. But she always used to tell us that because I think that's true, you let loose at the bar afterward and it can get away from you. And then if you have 6 more shows to perform this week, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. And there's a way you just have to be aware of it, and it's good to go out and have fun because that's part of your mental self-care, right? Your self-care of being around your friends and having a good time. You're not just a performance spot, but also knowing you're maybe if they're smoking, we'll go to the non-smoking section, or maybe I won't shout over, the music at the bar. Yeah. And number 3, see, this is hard because those are the big 2. I would say number 3, what really helped me is to, I really loved writing hand letters to my loved ones. It really, going to a coffee shop and postcards were my greatest joy, staying connected. Stay connected to people outside of your tour bubble. And your Broadway bubble, I would say that as well. That's really important because it can become a bubble. And when you're in a bubble, whether you're in college, whether you're on tour, whether you're doing a regional gig where you're not around where you normally are and your normal people, your support system, right? It can feel things that really shouldn't weigh you down that much start feeling like they are the epitome of it matters. But as soon as you leave that bubble, it really doesn't matter, and you didn't need to stress over it. There didn't need to be drama. You find that being in a bubble makes it's easier to slip into the dramatic or the flair of things matter more than they should, which provides you stress and anyone else stress. And so it's really important to stay connected with your outside community and your friends that know you. And that really helped me is writing handwritten letters because I had to take the time and be intentional about it. Also, I really loved creating a schedule for myself, because once you're out of college, you gotta create your schedule. No one's telling you to go to class. There isn't you're not set for private voice lessons. It's you gotta make sure that you steward your gifts well with your time.
Being intentional. I like what you said about that in terms of everything, really, your own personal schedule, and then also when you're on traveling and you're on tour, reaching out to your loved ones and staying connected that way and being intentional about that. That really resonates with me. And I understand what you mean when you talk about the bubble and how it's so helpful in normal life when you're not traveling to be in that bubble, but then be able to go home to your loved ones and like, connect on a different level. And so it sort of grounds you to a different world. But if you're in that theater bubble all the time and you're only with one group of people, there's nowhere to latch out of that,
Exactly.
So I think that's an awesome solution that you talk about.
Thank you.
Okay, amazing. So let's move on to the next question. What piece of advice would you give an arts student on their way out of college and into the sort of real world industry?
Yeah. I would definitely say create a schedule for yourself. Also, wherever you're moving, give yourself a solid year for it to feel comfortable, for it to feel like home, because depending on where you went to college, I mean, kids who went to Pace University and NYU, they've already been living in the city. But for those kids who have not been living in New York City, it can be a cultural and a huge shift. Also physical, because you'll be walking a lot more than you think. So give yourself that time and that grace to kind of settle in. Again, practice self-love and care. Find your people, reach out to your friends during that time. Give yourself some time to feel settled and at home. Make yourself a schedule. That's what I would say. And for those of you in the business, if you're an actor, it would behoove you while you're young and while you're new to the city and there's that fresh, tangible excitement for fresh blood and new young talent coming up. Get yourself into classes in front of casting directors so they can get to know you, especially if you don't have an agent. If you have an agent, still get into those classes. That's great, but if you have an agent, you're definitely going to get seen more, usually. But if you don't have an agent, get in front of those casting directors so they can get to know you and you can get in the door. That's huge.
That's great advice. Is that something that you did when you first moved to New York? Like, were there specific places that you would go? I know there's like a few like locations specifically in New York where they do those classes with casting directors and stuff.
Yes, I did many, and I still continue to. If there are casting directors that I don't know in the TV film world, I'll take a class with them at one-on-one. One-on-one's great. Actors Connection is great. There are other classes out there like Growing Studio and other studios that are held by casting directors themselves. And there's acting studios that can also get you connected. None are coming to mind. I know that I went to NCS for a while.
Okay.
And I know that there's like the Vance Barber studio, but there's a lot of classes that you can get into that both study technique and do like a showcase if your show doesn't showcase, if your school doesn't have a showcase. But it's just really great because when you get out of college, they're going to be excited about you. That's it's like the shiny new toy. So jump on that and show them who you are and tell them how to cast you. It's a great opportunity for you to show them who you are outside of them looking for something specific. So they can see where you would be castable.
Yeah, outside of like a specific show or a specific vision that they might have for something that they're casting, if they kind of see you and they're like, oh, she could be, I'm going to pin her for a later whatever.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. Yeah, I think it's, I don't know if you know this, but I just graduated in May from NYU.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, but it's such a weird time, to be graduating now. It's definitely not how I expected my first post-grad months to be. But it's turning out to be quite interesting, because I'm learning to navigate the industry in a very different way, doing things like this show, that I probably wouldn't have developed otherwise.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's been fascinating, and I'm excited to get back to the city and when things are able to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think anyone, when this first went down, I don't think we all understood how long the industry would be put on hold, intermission, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's been crazy, but you're doing the exact right thing. You're staying creative. And it's such a weird, unprecedented time, right? Where everything's kind of stopped. And I think a lot of people, it's a really great time it's weird and there are bad things happening, but there's also a time happening where people are forced to slow down, where I know that for me personally, I never get a chance to slow down. And it's provided a really great ground, like a level ground for self-reflection, especially during this time and the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that. I think a lot of people are really going within themselves, because at this point there's no excuse. What else are we doing, you know?
Right.
Of course, except for the people working on the front lines and the people who are working in jobs that are still going. That's important.
Exactly. Very much. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's I try to look on the bright side of things, because there's so much that's going awry right now in the world and in politics and all of that. But if I think about, you know, the time that I'm spending at home and just, like you said, reflecting, it's quite unique. You know, I don't think a lot of us would have spent this much time sort of just with ourselves, because we're kind of forced to.
Right.
So it can be really helpful as an artist.
Yeah, I like to say that this season is like, with this really dark, gritty storm cloud, there is a bright, shining silver lining. And as soon as that storm cloud passes, the light is going to be so blinding, you know, that no one can stay in the dark. It's pretty powerful. Powerful things come out of
like
really hard times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like new art. Like what you're working on. That sounds exciting to me. I can't wait to see what shows, what musicals, what books, the things that are going to come out of times like this. I just can't wait. And I'm sure things are launching now. You know, it's pretty incredible.
It is. I mean, even just the like how well shows are sort of moving online. Like even the Super You song that you guys recorded, it was incredible to me. I was like, the way that everyone has adapted to like new ways of recording stuff and putting it all together, new editing techniques to, you know, account for people's bad internet wherever they are. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it was really striking to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's that, and now Hamilton is streaming today, everybody. So go run to see it. I mean, it's making theater more accessible. I mean, Broadway HD was doing that, but now I think we're going to see a lot more accessibility of this particular medium. And Super U's also doing these things where we go and we do concerts of the excerpts of the show in a drive-in movie theater in the back of a pickup truck. Each of us has our own socially distanced separate pickup truck, and people have masks on and they're honking their horns. So people are starting to get creative, you know,
that's amazing.
Exciting.
Yeah, that's very cool. Okay, we're almost out of time, but I want to get in our last question today. So, who is someone that is not in your network currently that you wish was, and how would you go about getting them into your network?
Oh gosh, who specifically? Somebody? Well, I've always wanted.
I mean, it could be specific.
Okay. Well, I've always wanted to work with the mouse. I grew up on Disney and I love Disney. So probably I would audition for the Disney shows. I would find the Disney casting directors and I would get into class with them. That's a good way. But someone specific that I don't have in my network, that maybe not even, I don't even want to say that it would be my network, but I just love Bernadette Peters.
Oh my God.
If I could follow her career, I mean, if I could just have her career, she's amazing, and everything I've heard about her from my friends in Hello Dolly is that she is the nicest human to work with. I don't know, if she was in something, I would audition for it. If they ever had a biopic of her, I would definitely like write a letter and try to get seen for it. I mean, I don't know, she is an amazing woman, and she probably does not have the time of day, but if I ever do meet her, I will make sure to let her know how powerful her impact has been on my journey.
That's amazing. And I hope, I mean, you are in a very parallel circle to her, you know? You just are, which is so cool. And if you think about it, kind of mind-blowing. Like, there is a huge chance that, you know, you could be working with her someday soon. And I think that that's so cool.
My friends have walked by her on the street.
That's so
Like,
cool.
That's what's so amazing. They've seen her on the street in her sun hat.
Of course, she's wearing a sun
just
hat. Oh, Bernadette. I love that. Well, Kennedy, thank you so much for joining us on Avenue A.
Thank you so much for having me. I love it. Keep going.
Thank you. And I hope that you have a very restful and peaceful rest of your quarantine. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you next time.
All right, everyone, that concludes another episode of Avenue A. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you want to watch the replay or forward it on to your friends, you can find this on Facebook, the Avenue A live, or on YouTube under my name, Kelsey Bentz. And before I go, if anyone wants to follow Kennedy, she is amazing. You can follow her on Instagram at Kennedy Caughell, or on Facebook, Kennedy Caughell as well. So go follow her because she is amazing. And watch that video from Super You because those vocals they gave me chills all over. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Avenue A. Bye.